In Chapter 15, we're going to be discussing lipids. In this section, we're going to discuss the introduction to what lipids are in general. Lipids are biomolecules, contain fatty acids. When they're referring to fatty acids, they're actually referring to carboxylic acids. So if you remember from your functional groups, that's a carbon with a double bonded oxygen and an OH group. And then another carbon chain coming off of that carbon. That's a carboxylic acid, and that's what they're meaning by fatty acids. There's two categories. There's a category that contains fatty acids and a category that contains a steroid nucleus. So when we're talking about the two categories, that's what we're referring to. The fatty acids can then be broken down into further categories. Because these are, the steroid nucleus is actually 3 hexagons and a pentagon all shaped together. And we're going to talk about that more later. Because they're primarily carbons and hydrogens here, they're not soluble in water because they're nonpolar. Remember, water is a polar molecule. Hydrogen, oxygen, hydrogen. Oxygen's partially negative, hydrogen's partially positive. They need to have a positive negative there to interact. Because these are primarily carbons and hydrogens, there's no positive and negative to interact with the water. So that means that they do not dissolve in water. However, they do dissolve in other organic solvents. This is because most organic solvents are nonpolar, so like dissolves like. Which means if we ever want to get some out of a cell, we have to use organic solvents to do that. The word lipids comes from the Greek word lipos, which translates as fat, and they're very important for multiple reasons. An extremely important part is the fact that cell membranes, including the cells in our bodies, are made of these lipids. They are also important for fat-soluble vitamins and steroid hormones. So, as I said before, the fatty acids, which are here, can be broken down further. And you'll be able to compare and contrast all these total of 5 different lipids: waxes, fats, oils, glycerophospholipids, and steroids. Notice, as I said before, the steroids are 3 hexagons and a pentagon, and that's called the steroid nucleus. And you're going to see that particular structure with differences amongst them, slight differences, like a double bond here or a carbon chain there. And then, but you'll always see the basic structure of 3 hexagons and a pentagon. So as I said before, here's the steroids, here's the fatty acids, which are actually carboxylic acids. Remember, this is one abbreviation for carboxylic acid. If we write it out, that's how it looks. C-O-O-H. C-O-O-H. And those are broken down into waxes, trialkylglycerols, and glycerophospholipids. There are 2 types of lipids: fatty acids and steroids. Which type is described by the following? Contains a 4-ring structure. Here's your clue right there. Ring. That means it's steroids. Because you have 3 hexagons and a pentagon. Contains long carbon chains. Those are the fatty acids. Because those are the carboxylic acids. And includes trialkylglycerols. And once again, those are fatty acids. The next one, Which of the following is not a characteristic of lipids? May contain a carboxylic acid group. Well, those are your fatty acids. So that is obviously true. May contain a 4-ring structure. Those are your steroids, so that's going to be true. Soluble in water and mostly nonpolar. Those contradict each other, so one of those must be right, one must be wrong. Mostly nonpolar. This is true because it contains mainly carbon and hydrogen. There are oxygens there, but there's so many carbons and hydrogens that they don't balance out. And then finally, because that's nonpolar, that means C, they are not soluble in water, so that one's false. And that gives you a brief introduction to lipids.